For this Cellent Collisions project, we had to design our own car, which would prevent the egg inside it from cracking. This is my final product of my egg car, and to make the roll cage, I used straws and metal wires. Straws are bendable products which allow me to bend and create a car as I want. Before using the straws, I used the metal wire which is bendable and hard, which will make my car sturdy, and it will be easy for me to bend the structure as I want. The wire goes through the straw in order to create a more solid structure. Then I made sure that there was a bit of wire coming out to stick it through the foam on the bottom of the roll cage. I did this to elevate the roll cage onto something which would be easy to put on the car. As for the seat and the seatbelt, I designed it after an actual seat on a car, and the seatbelt was designed after a baby seatbelt. Babies are rather secured on cars and are protected very well. For the roll cage design, it was made to look similar to a toy car. I looked at one and designed it after that. I did this because people have invented cars to be safe, and designing after one will ensure its safety. For the first plan, however, I had for my car was designed after a box. It would have been made with chopsticks because they are hard and sturdy. I was going to make it look like a box because an egg that fits into a box would be perfect and would not come out easily. But the problem was that the design with that design would be how I would get the egg inside the box in the first place. I used taut gun to gun everything in place. I had Velcro on the bottom of the foam so the roll cage structure would fit onto the car. The main purpose of how I designed it was to make sure to design an egg car that would decrease the egg's velocity/speed when it hits the ground to minimize the force of impact. I also made sure that the car was not too heavy because if there were too much mass, it would increase the acceleration of my car, which could possibly lead to a hard impact. I also had to account the fact that the car would be dropped from an inclined surface. This is the top view of my egg car, and this is the front view of my egg car. And after building the egg car, I had to test it for a trial run, and this is my trial run. During the trial run, I learned that the car goes down very fast because of acceleration of the steep ramp. The Velcro came right off as soon as it touched the end of the ramp, which I learned that my prototype was not stuck on correctly because there was a steep piece of wire from my roll cage structure coming out from the bottom. After testing the trial run, I made some modifications. The modifications I made was that I cut out the piece of wire coming out and reinforced the wires to make sure it doesn't accidentally come off of the foam bottom. And then another modification I made was that I changed my rubber band and rubber band seatbelt because the rubber band started to get loose and I wanted to make sure the egg would not come out because the rubber band was not tight enough to hold the egg in. After making all those modifications, we had to do our final run. And the forces that are acting on the egg when it's going down the ramp is firstly Newton's first law. An object at rest will remain at rest until acted on by an imbalanced force. An object moving continues in motions with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted on by an unbalanced force. The egg car will continue to move unless it is stopped by an unbalanced force, which is the ramp's wall. Acceleration. Acceleration is the rate at which an object speeds up or slows down. The longer the egg goes downhill, the faster it accelerates, therefore gaining more speed. Gravity. When the egg car is dropped, it will have a gravitational pull on it, pulling it straight to the ground. However, there is a ramp which gives it a certain path to go down it. There's also abnormal normal force. The normal force is not directed in the direction that we are accustomed to. Usually normal forces act in an upward direction, opposite the direction of the force of gravity, but this is because objects were always on horizontal surfaces and never on inclined platforms, thus it is abnormal. The force of gravity will be resolved in two components of forces, one directed parallel to the inclined surface and the other will be directed perpendicular to the inclined surface. There's also speed. The speed is how fast the egg car is moving, and that will depend on the degree of how much the ramp is inclined, the length of the ramp, and how much mass each person has for their car. There's also potential and kinetic energy. The energy associated with motion is called kinetic energy. Every object, moving object has some kinetic energy. The faster an object is moving, the more kinetic energy it has. There's also potential energy, which is the gravitational potential energy, which is equal to the work done in getting the object into its position or condition. As for the forces that are acting on the egg during the collision, there is the force of Newton's first law again. Newton's first law says that an object in motion stays in motion and an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. Inertia is the tendency to resist the change in motion. So if you crash your car into something, your body will resist the change in motion, and unless something stops it, first your body will crash into the object at the same speed that the car crashed into the object. For this egg collision project, when the car crashes into the ramp's wall, the seatbelt or the other object you crash into will be the outside force that slows down the crash. There's also Newton's second law. Newton's second law says that in order for something to accelerate, you must apply force to the object. When the net external force acts in the direction of motion, the object speeds up. When the net external force acts in the opposite direction, the object slows down. Newton's second law applies to the egg car crash because when the car crashes, the car and the wall will both experience a force which changes the car's acceleration. There's also Newton's third law. Newton's third law says that for every action there is equal and opposite reaction. The force that the egg car exerted on the wall is the same as the force that the wall exerted on the car in the opposite direction. There's also momentum. Momentum is the product of the mass and velocity of an object. It will vary for everyone's car because we all have different mass and velocity for our cars. There's also impulse. When a small force is applied over a long amount of time, it will create the same momentum as a larger force applied over a shorter amount of time. When I designed my A car, I made sure that impulse, the force put onto the wall, would increase the amount of time that the force of gravity acted on the egg. The impulse or force exerted by the wall would be reduced if the drop time was increased in some way. In case of the wall, the time of the collision gets smaller, force gets bigger, extending the amount of time keeps people safe during a crash. Of course, there's also force. A force is any interaction that, when opposed, will change the motion of an object. A force can cause an object with mass to change its velocity, which includes to begin moving from a state of rest to accelerate. In this case, where we have a ramp, the car will accelerate due to inclined platform. After the final run, we had to create our own poster with detailed plans and our final product, how we created it, and etc. And I think my egg Cellent Collision was pretty successful because the egg did not break. However, the Velcro did come out of the car, making my roll cage flip numerous times, which made my egg fall out the seatbelt. And if I were to make more modifications, I would glue a cardboard layer under the foam because the foam was the main reason the Velcro didn't stick as well. Another modification I would have made was to get a thicker rubber product, like the thing you use to wrap your knee or ankle around when you're injured. But overall, I think I did pretty well. The egg may have came out of the seatbelt, but it did not come out of the roll cage, and it did not crack.